They're dying. Their family members are dying because they're becoming infected with the disease. This company knew absolutely that they had a problem with the product. They knew that it was infected with AIDS. They dumped it because they wanted to turn this disaster into a profit.
Mike, I want to read to you what Bayer told the New York Times about this scandal. They said Bayer behaved responsibly, ethically, and humanely. Decisions made nearly 2 decades ago were based on the best scientific information of the time and were consistent with the regulations in place. That sounds like a lot of legal mumbo-jumbo. Now, you say you have internal documents that show that they knew that this drug they were dumping was tainted with the AIDS drug? Or the AIDS virus?
The documents show that there was no question that this company absolutely understood the risk, that they knew that it was contaminated. It wasn't a possibility. They knew it was contaminated. Americans were dying from the product before it was pulled off the market. The only reason it was pulled off the market is because lawyers found the documents and showed it to the government, and finally the government said, you can't sell it here, but then the government allowed them to dump it in Spain, France, and Japan.
That's amazing. That's just amazing.
Well,
I want to read to you what the New York Times said, and this is an investigation that they also did, and they said the federal government was part of the problem while the Food and Drug Administration told the company not to ship the drugs overseas. The man responsible for the drug supply, quote, asked that the issue be quietly solved without alerting the Congress, the medical community, and the public. This is a cover-up, and our Congress is not doing anything. What should Americans do?
It's emerged that a virulent H5N1 bird flu strain was sent out by accident from an Austrian lab last year and given to ferrets in Czechoslovakia Republic before anyone realized this, as well as the risk of it escaping into the wild. The H5N1 then got mixed up with a human strain, which might have spawned a hybrid that could have unleashed a pandemic. Last December, the Austrian branch of the U.S. vaccine company Baxter sent a batch of ordinary human H3N2 flu, altered it so it couldn't replicate, to Aver Greenhills Biotechnology, also in Austria. Now, in February, a lab in the Czech Republic alerted Baxter that ferrets inoculated with the sample had simply died. It turned out the sample contained the live H5N1, which Baxter uses to make the vaccine. The two seem to have been mixed in error. Marcus Reinhardt of Baxter says no one was infected because the H3N2 was handled at a high level of containment. But Ab Osterhaus of Erasmus University in the Netherlands says, we don't need to go to great lengths to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again. This is a major story that's not being picked up by the mainstream media.
This virus that was isolated has never been seen before in the virus banks that are being kept around the world.
Just as it sounds, this is an influenza virus that is commonly seen in pigs. However, in rare occurrences, the virus does cause infections in humans. Swine influenza infections typically look clinically much like seasonal influenza, having symptoms such as fever, cough, sore throat, and muscle aches. Sometimes additional symptoms such as diarrhea or red eyes are also present. Typically, in swine influenza cases, there is evidence or there's information leading to that the individual had direct contact with pigs. This strain of swine influenza that's been cultured in the laboratory,
According to a report in WorldNet Daily, some of the richest men and women in the world met secretly in New York recently. When the world's wealthiest individuals hold secret meetings, it's time to pay attention. In 1910, the 6 wealthiest men in the world met at Jekyll Island, Georgia. That meeting resulted in the creation, 3 years later, of the largest criminal enterprise ever devised, the Federal Reserve, so-called. Judging from the list of participants, the recent meeting in New York may result in something even more monumental. The London Times identified them as Bill Gates, David Rockefeller, Ted Turner, Oprah Winfrey, Warren Buffett, George Soros, and New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Based on the Forbes magazine list of billionaires, the room had a net worth of about $120 billion. With all the bailout figures we've heard recently, that doesn't sound like that much. Believe me, it is. $120 billion is about equal to the annual budget for all of New York State, from New York City to Buffalo and everything in between. The meeting, which took place in early May, was at the home of Sir Paul Nurse, a British Nobel Prize-winning biochemist and president of Rockefeller University. Microsoft's founder, Bill Gates, called the meeting. The London Times reported the informal afternoon session was so discreet that some of the billionaire's aides were told they were at security briefings. Discreet is the British way of saying secret. I do not believe that it is coincidental that this meeting came only a couple of weeks after another super-secret and more powerful group met in the secrecy in Greece, the Bilderberg Group. They have advocated a one-world government for at least a century. They also see themselves as the elite saviors of mankind. According to the Times, the billionaires were each given 15 minutes to present their favorite cause. Over dinner, they discussed how they might settle on an umbrella cause that could harness their interests. Taking their cue from Gates, the report said they agreed that population control was the #1 issue. Experts say the global population will top 7 billion in 2012. According to reports at the meeting, Bill Gates outlined a plan to cap the global population at 8.3 billion. It all sounds so civilized, doesn't it? Here's the less politically correct but more accurate version. A group of unelected liberals with more money than many governments have just decided how many people will be permitted to live. This group of self-appointed governors will now have to draw up criteria to be used to decide who will not be permitted to live and how they will die. It can and will be dressed up in polite and civil terms, but in the end, it means certain people will have to die. The meeting was billed as a meeting of philanthropists wanting to do good. But one can put lipstick and pearls on a pig, and it'll still be a pig. In the final analysis, there's only one way to cap a population, by deciding who's permitted to live and who, for the good of all, must die.